Joining me now is musician Vinnie Dombrowski, who you probably know from his band Sponge, but he's also part of a great new band called the Lucid. They have a song out called Maggot Wind, and we're going to talk to him about that and a lot more. Thanks for joining us today, Vinnie.
Good to see you. Good to speak with you, Christian.
Reading up on you, you started playing drums when you were 13 and you grew up in Detroit. So obviously, we've had so much great just music in general, but specifically so much great rock music. I'm sort of wondering what was it that you heard growing up there, and what was it about the drums? Was it a specific drummer, or was it just the fact that it was the loudest instrument you could find?
I do think that going to see a concert at a local mall, like when they used to have open air malls and they closed them all in, then they opened them up again. But the Count Basie Orchestra, my dad was a big jazz fan, and he took me and my brother to see the Count Basie Orchestra. So I can't recall who was playing drums with Count Basie that day, but it was extremely loud, powerful. Just the impact of the kick drum was just stunning, even for a big band. And you would kind of consider that the rock music was the loudest thing on earth, but the big band at that time was just like crushing. So that definitely turned me on. And then anything loud, my dad also played guitar, so there was always a guitar around the house, and we loved to sit and knock out chords and even write songs at that early age.
Yeah, no, I mean that absolutely makes sense. And when you talk about sort of the big band sound, it's the sheer number of musicians could probably just drown out a rock band with like three guys with some amps plugged in. So I never really thought of it that way. But as soon as you said it, it's like but there there could be like 12 of them on stage. So
oh man, yeah, when they're hitting hard, they're hitting all the hits
yeah.
at the right time. It's just insanely powerful.
Reading up on you, it seemed like some of your influences obviously are characterized as being products of that era. Reading about the MC5, the Stooges, and conveniently enough, I forgot this was in your notes, but I am wearing an Alice Cooper shirt today because it's Halloween time. So I just saw that in some of the lists. So what was it just seeing bands live? Was there a local radio station? How did you start discovering some of these bands that became big influences?
Yeah, local radio was vital to that, to learning about new bands for sure. One station in particular back in the day was WABX. There was another station called The Riff, that was doing late night. Peter Werby was doing late night, I think, on The Riff back then. So you had these just incredible bands that had this format of rock radio back then. It was absolutely stunning. Alice Cooper back then, on the radio, CKLW, not to mention my older sister bringing home like $1 Billion Babies record, which to me was, just one of the all-time great records. And then eventually a
Yeah.
record like, Diamond Dogs by David Bowie.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're talking about an era where obviously the albums were so great. I mean, you're still talking about, you just mentioned two of them, and and a lot of times when I'm talking to musicians, Toys in the Attic and Rock's two Aerosmith albums always come out, and it's like a great, even a good album back then. There wasn't a song that you were like, I guess that's there just to kind of fill out the runtime. Like you had at least like 10 great songs on everything. And I think that's sort of, it has nothing to do with the way that we have the delivery system of music now. I think bands really kind of got away from that in a lot of different ways. But I'm excited to hear more from the Lucid, which is you and David Alfson, who obviously everybody knows from his time with Megadeth, and he's been on the show a couple of times. He's great. And I think that there's a couple other guys. So talk about how the Lucid comes about, how you knew any of the guys, and how you got involved in the project.
It was just simply an email, and that email came from Drew Fortier, who was playing guitar with Bang Tango, and it came not to my personal email because I have no manager, and I thought, well, if anything official comes to me, maybe it would come to me through my agent or something like that. But this came through the Sponge the Band website, the general email, and I'm going, this is weird. This guy is asking me about maybe doing some co-writing, and it could have been anybody, just like any person that has some ambition about writing with anybody, asking me to write. And at first, I really didn't know who was in the group at all. And then they backed off for a second. They were like, "Nah, it sounds too much like Sponge. We'll pass." I go, "Well, send me the stuff anyway." They sent me some songs, and then I found out who they were. I started reading, the email a little bit further, and lo and behold, Mike Haller, David Alvison, and of course Drew Fortier. And we started from there.
Yeah, and so the album is self-titled. It'll be available October 15th, and people can find out and pre-order lucidofficial.com. And you can also find that on Facebook when Facebook is actually working, and Twitter, the Lucid_band. I had to write that out. So, you can, but you go to the website, you'll be able to find everything. And it's interesting what you were saying, sort of compared to, as I mentioned in the intro, your work with Sponge. It is very different, and I've only heard 2 songs from it, but when we'll talk some about that a little bit. But I don't think that I would describe this sound as using the word metal, even with having the guy from Megadeth on it. But some of the song titles, just 3 in particular, they were some of the most metal sounding song titles I'd seen in a while. Deaths of Despair, Pigs and Sons, but especially Parade of Spit. If there isn't anything more metal than Parade of Spit. But the 2 songs, there's a couple of songs out now. The one that I've heard is the Damned, which is or it's just called Damned, has a very catchy chorus, I guess is the best way to put it. And of course, Maggot Wind is the big one out now. So talk about actually making the album and sort of collaborating with these guys. It seemed like you didn't know them at all, right? It was really that email is what started it.
Yeah, that's correct. And making this record, and I underscore record, you touched on a great point, which was going all the way back to the days of Aerosmith with the Rocks and Get Your Wings record. And by the way, who wouldn't give the right arm to put Joe Perry and Steven Tyler in a room together under the old circumstances and how they used to do things to make one last record, maybe like Rocks. You know what I mean? I just go,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be great? So what we're talking about with the Lucid fast forward is it's a not a other people can pick the singles, in my humble opinion, and people I guess have, and I go, that's great, but to me it's about the totality. It's the whole record. It's a whole group of songs that you might hear Damned on the radio, or you might hear Maggot Wind on the radio, but make no mistake, you're going to want to listen to the whole damn record. And I think that's why, to me, there's no like, you know, B-side. There's no like album track. To me, they're all just like really strong songs. And whether they go to radio or not, to me, that's not my concern. So to have a song called "Pray to Spit," I'm not necessarily worried about it being palatable for radio.
No, and I mean, I sort of didn't even think of it in that way. It's just sort of, I love the turn of phrase, and I don't know anything about those songs, just the 2 that I mentioned, Maggot Wind and Damned, but those are both out there on YouTube. And as I mentioned, the album self-titled, it'll be available pre-order October 15th, everywhere that I mentioned, but lucidofficial.com. And was this made at a time where you guys were able to get in the studio? Did everybody work separately? Was it a mix and match of sending stuff and then also some studio work, or, how did it get put together? Because I've talked to bands where everybody in the band is together, and then I've talked to bands where no one was ever together at any point, anything that was made in the last year and a half. So, it seems like there's a lot of different ways to go about doing this in this day and age.
Yeah. Well, it was like that. It was, the band, well, it was one of the previous ways you described, which is the band doing things on our own. But we did get together at Mike Heller's studio in Los Angeles for a couple of days while David was cutting his bass track. So Mike Heller, being an incredible drummer, he's also a great producer. So he kind of like was the quarterback as far as like what takes got recorded, and what eventually was kept to go on to get mixed. So yeah, we all got together for a few days in LA when David was doing his bass parts. but I was cutting all my vocals at home outside of Detroit, and I'd send Mike a bunch of stuff, and he would instruct me as to what he wanted to hear, something doubled, a harmony, maybe a better performance. So I was game to whatever, because I think he helped me up my game. So I think Drew was doing something very similar, which was remotely recording guitar.
And in terms of, you have a band like this, obviously it could go a couple of ways. Every once in a while, everybody could, try and do some more material together. Or I guess it could also be sort of more of a band where, everybody's got other work that they're doing as well. But is there any plan to take these songs out on the road and do some live shows? Or is that remain to be seen? Or is it somewhere in the middle between all that?
Well, the plan, I've been told that, the idea is to go out in 2022 and start doing some shows. So,
Great.
I would assume like soft ticket things. The boys were talking about doing some, rock cruises and things like that. Whether I doubt we would go out and do a club tour, to be quite frank with you. It's just like I go to clubs. We've all done that. That's a lot of fun. But I would think that folks would see us as a support act for another major group, or on the road with another major group. There was talk about going to Europe. So all those things are possible, but not until 2022.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's interesting because I think a lot of times, you'll have bands who do side projects, or sometimes they have to start a new band for a whole variety of reasons. And when club tours become the only option, a lot of times, it's like, oh, that's not as much fun. Like, a great example is Vivian Campbell has that band Last in Line, that's basically it grew out of sort of the remains of Dio. And then, so he'll be doing shows with Def Leppard one night, and then he'll fly somewhere, and then, on his own time, and then do that. And then you have the other side where there's that band, the Dead Daisies, where the guy who runs the thing is independently wealthy. So he's like, I don't care if we're playing clubs. We're going to fly on my plane. We're going to stay at nice hotels. And I think that most bands don't get to do that, and I think that when you can go out and play, it's, if you could go out and do a gig, you could do gigs with Sponge and, be more comfortable. I can see like, well, I don't know if I want to do that, but getting paired up, on a big tour, I think it had the two songs I've heard. It seems like, it really could get paired up with a lot of different kinds of bands. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, this is a metal band. This could only go out, this could go with it could go with some bands on that level, but also just, a lot of different styles of rock. I think, it would pair well with it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. Sponge is one of those bands that plays 1 minute we're doing support for a larger band, and then we're turning around and going to play a club. So I do love playing clubs. I just can't imagine the Lucid going out there and slugging it out in clubs. I think there's a lot of meat on the bone as far as experience collectively, and the music kind of justifies us going and playing some support role someplace. That's what I think. I mean, I never believe in that's just pass go and collect $100, that kind of thing. I think that you always got to pay your dues, but I think each one of us individually our dues. I go, maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. People go, Lucid, you got to go play in a club for 25 people for $60. I don't know.
Yeah, there's that legendary story about ZZ Top when they were first starting out, and they were playing, and there was one guy in the crowd, and he was so uncomfortable he was going to leave, but they said, no, please stick around, like hang out. And they like kept in touch with that guy for the course of 50 years. It was like, thanks for hanging in there, and sometimes you play for one guy and you get rewarded for it. I got a comment in the chat from, it says Rock Dance Theater. Hi, Vin. Cheers and congrats on the Lucid album. Kick ass. And then it's some devil horns and some fire. So that seems like, that's somebody that's very happy if you get that many devil horns and that much fire. Well, I look forward to hearing more. And again, it's lucidofficial.com. I wanted to talk to you for a few more minutes. I know that earlier this year, Sponge put out a new album, Lavatorium, which I hope I said right. And you can always find out more at spongetheband.com. And I guess if somebody wants to co-write with you, that is one way to find you, but it's probably not the best way to find you. But spongetheband.com. And I think it's interesting because, you look and it seems like, Sponge seems to still do albums every few years. And you'll talk to a band. You mentioned how it'd be great to get Aerosmith to do one more album. That is a band that doesn't seem interested in making new music. And then you have others. I talked to I talked to one of the guys in Night Ranger just like a month or so ago, and they're excited to just keep putting out new albums. It seems like there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Is it one of those things that's just important to you? Like, I've got all these ideas in my head, I want to put them out, and you hope that somebody finds it, but if not, it's not real. You're not really putting it out there with the hopes of like, well, this is going to sell X number of copies. It's more the expression. Or what is it to you that makes you still record music at this point?
For the reason that I started recording in the first place, who would have thought in a climate back in the day where like alternative rock radio was just a baby, and rock radio for the most part was still playing AC/DC, Zeppelin, these Aerosmith. I love all those bands, but we got a song like Plowed. You go, well, Plowed doesn't sound like AC/DC, and neither did Molly. But we didn't write those songs for radio. Not at all. It was never the intent to write for radio. We're just writing songs. So writing is such an important thing for me. I just continue to do it, write and record. We recorded our first record, Riding Pinata, on our own dime. We were just like, we're just going to record. And we were recording. So before Sony even got involved with us, we were halfway through with the record. Then they got involved with us. So it's like, no matter what, I always got to record, and I love doing that. And I'm one of those guys that, I got several different projects, alt country, outlaw country projects. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were playing for 2 people in a beer tent, 2. And it was probably one of the most fun shows I've had in a long time. So I just go, why do we do what we do? We do it because we love doing it. And that's about it. So, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that personally, I always like to hear from artists that I've liked for a long time, because I'm like, yeah, well, where are they at right now, and what's coming out of their head at the moment, and what sounds live in their head, and then I think that it's great to be able to hear. And I think most bands know that. I always use the example of there was one time, this is like almost 30 years ago, but I saw the Steve Miller Band open, and he did. There's that greatest hit 74 to 78 that like pretty much everybody has. So he did that album. He snuck in one new song in the middle, and then we're right back to, big old jet airliner or something. I'm like, yeah, I think that that's probably what people look for. Your average concert goer, when they're going and, they were opening for the Grateful Dead. So it's like people weren't there for Steve Miller, So I think that,
right.
I understand how a lot of bands, you'll have a band like Iron Maiden that they'll go out and be like, yeah, we're going to do the whole new album, and, you're going to come anyway. So, but I think most bands are pretty cognizant of that. I've talked to a lot of musicians who it's like, yeah, we're good for maybe 1 or 2 new songs. Do you find that there's challenges in that of, how much new stuff do you sprinkle in there? Or is it really just depends on the day, and what, I'm feeling 3 or 4 new ones today?
Well, I mean, we got a ton of music from like the 9 studio Sponge records. We got a ton of stuff to play from those records. There's really only a handful of radio songs. There's Plowed, Molly, Wax Ecstatic, Have You Seen Mary, Raining in My House. And I think Nina Menashe was our first single, but it didn't really chart that high. So we made a video. That was our first offering to radio. So, and the rest of the, hour and a half set or whatever it is, it's stuff that's from, the other 6 albums, 7 albums or so. So it's like, we want to play new music. We got to play new music. It's what we do. Yeah. And the fans over the years, they expect us to offer them something new, man. They will grumble. They show up. And we take the requests. We started making set lists over the last couple of years. Like we actually have a set. Other than that, we were just working off of the request, and we don't rehearse that much. So You know, we get up there and we can find our way through some of the, deep cuts. But I mean, we try to play what they want us to play.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, I think it's reminding me of a conversation I had last year with, I think, a band that had sort of a very similar, a couple albums in the middle of their career that were really big and continued to make music. I talked to Dave Perna from Soul Asylum, and obviously they have a couple of
Yeah.
huge radio hits, but also a ton of albums.
Yep.
And he said to me
Yep.
that, when it comes to Runaway Train, sometimes he'll ask the audience, and usually they'll say yes, they want it, but every once in a while they're like, nah, play something else. And he's like, okay, great. It's like, it's like, this is going to be it. This is going to probably be a more fun show. And it's like, look, you realize you have those songs that people are there to see. Imagine going to see Kiss and they don't play Rock and Roll All Night at the end. You're like, what happened?
Yeah.
And so I think, but yeah, when you, like you're saying, if you get to play for an hour and a half, it's great. I mean, I think that you have a lot of bands, that'll go out. A good example is the band Tesla. They'll be like third on like a bill of 3 bands and they get like 35 minutes. So it's like, well, you have like 5 songs people want to hear you play. Is one of them going to be your new song? Maybe, but I think when you're getting to do bigger headline shows, you're able to, and hits is a relative term, but obviously in your case, these are all actual radio hits, but you have the songs like, yeah, people expect to hear these songs, but if they're coming to see you, I would say that most people that buy a ticket to a band, they're not like, well, I'm only going for these 5 songs, so.
Oh man, that would be just a sad thing, because we have a lot invested in the fans, and the fans have a lot invested in us, basically, and they know that they're not coming. They're for the hit tunes. They have such great requests, man. It's things we wouldn't think of playing that we go, oh man, let's give that a whack. Like we have a song that we recorded during the first album called Cowboy Eyes, and people know that as a B-side. I don't know how they know it, but they request it, and then other people learn about that song and they love the tune. You know what I mean? Because we can actually still play and sing the damn thing, which is great. So it's like, some people though will play Molly early on in the set, and some people get there a little late, and halfway through the set they're going to play Molly, and I'll say, well, you know what? We're going to play Molly again for that guy that was late. You know what I mean? We don't even mind playing the hits twice if we got it,
Yeah, right. Exactly. It reminds me, there's a episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes to see Bachman Turner Overdrive and he's yelling for taking care of business. And they're like, oh, we'll get there. And he's like, no, play it now. And then they start to play it. He's like, no, go to the work and overtime part. It's like he just wanted the chorus, And I think, it's interesting what you said about playing it earlier in the set. We were talking about Alice Cooper before. And I remember there was a tour where he started with Schools Out. And sometimes I wonder, like, do bands do that because they're like, look, we got it out of the way. So it's like, if you want to leave at some point, that's fine. We already gave you the one that you want. But I think it's fun to have that kind of interaction sometimes, with the crowd. I mean, has to be going back more than 20 years, but that band Presidents of the United States of America, they had 2 huge monster albums, but they also had a really obscure 7-inch, a song that was called Fuck California. And ironically, I live in California now, but I thought that the song was great. So I like yelled it out and they're like, really? Somebody, it's like, well, we're in New York, so we might as well play it. But, the idea, I don't think anybody was excited to hear it in that venue except me, but I'm like, wow, I got that in there, because I knew something. So you were talking about that B-side, and it's probably whoever convinced you guys to play it was like, I can't believe I have this moment, that I get this song that I've always wanted to hear or whatever,
Oh yeah, it's a treat for us though too, because when you look at the 90 or so songs that we actually recorded on an album,
sure,
we don't remember. I mean, we know the song, but we don't remember to play it in a set. So somebody comes up with a good suggestion and we can actually pull it off. It's kind of cool, because it's like rediscovering something that we hadn't touched on in a long time, and we get a kick out of it, as long as we don't butcher it too bad. And by the way, Alice Cooper opening up with Schools Out, to me, I go, wow. I mean, when you think about what the light show is doing and the presentation of the band, what song would be better than to open with? It makes me want to open up a Sponge show with Schools Out.
Well, if that happens, make sure you put it out there, because I would like to see that. If you guys are going to open with schools out, I'll make sure that I take the trip out there. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about in terms of Sponge, I was reminded just the timing of when those albums came out. The two big. I almost said first. Is Rotting Pinata the first album? I don't want to call it the first album if it isn't.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So yeah, and the fact, so that timing, whatever your label was, it clearly got it into a few movies, and I was just remembering that it's in some of like the most, like the biggest, I don't know, cult movies of the '90s: The Craft, Chasing Amy, Mallrats, and Empire Records. At least I
Oh
was
yeah.
in like college at that point, and those were like, I don't know, those are movies that I think friends that I have from that time, those movies still all come up. Now, is that just a simple matter of like, oh, a record company works that, and you're like, yeah, sure, whatever? Because I don't think that you recorded new songs for any of those movies, right?
No, we didn't record anything specific. I
Yeah.
think that I take that back. I think in The Craft we recorded a song. They asked us to record a song for that
Oh,
movie,
cool.
so specifically for that. But other than that, no. We were just asked to contribute a song. And we were like, great, that's cool, we'll do that. But like Molly Ringwald being in the Molly video wasn't cool to us back then, which I thought was stupid. Looking back, I go, we should have had Molly Ringwald in the Molly video.
Yeah, but at the moment, it just probably felt like, like a terrible idea. But that's funny. Yeah,
Well, I
that's
mean,
definitely one of those ones where you look back. Yeah.
I just didn't go like 2 years ago. Sponge was playing on the Summerland tour with Everclear, and we were playing at Steel Stacks, and then like literally a couple blocks away at a casino, Alice in Chains were playing. So Sponge had the early slot on Summerland, and we called the fellas to put us on the list to go see the Alice in Chains show. So after the show, we're just talking about, God, 20 years ago, would any of us consider playing a casino? And the answer would have been no. The answer was no. But we're all just laughing and going, God, the casinos treat you so great. But back then, you're going to casino, no way. Molly Ringwald in a video, no way. That's just cheesy, man. So, you'd rather play CBGBs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. It's although now CBGB's I think is a Chase Bank, so it would be tough to actually play there at this point. Although you never know, maybe Debbie Harry will do something there, for she'll sing a song for Chase. But yeah, and the thing about those casino gigs too is clearly that's all business. No support act. You go on at 8:00, you're off at like 9:15, and then you let everybody out into the casino. I've seen some great shows at casinos. They're always very punctual, But and yeah, I mean, I've heard from plenty of musicians that they're that they pay well because hey, that the casino is doing well. There's a lot of money coming in every day. Well, Vinnie, Vinnie, it's been great to get to chat with you. I really look forward to hearing more from the Lucid. And I had it a second ago. Let's see, the Lucid. So the Lucid official, just lucidofficial.com. That's what's throwing me off, because it's the Lucid_band on Twitter, and just Lucid Official, and spongetheband.com to keep track of Sponge, especially for when they might start a show with schools out sometime in the near future.
Ooh, but
yeah, Vinnie, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for chatting. And like I said, I look forward to hearing more from the Lucid in the very near future.
Well, this was great, Christian. Thank you for your time. Totally dynamite. See you.
Absolutely. Thanks again. And thanks again to Vinnie Dombrowski. As I mentioned, you check out the Lucid self-titled album on October 15th. And that, friends, concludes what has admittedly been an ambitious project, bringing our audio listeners brand new musician interviews every day for this past week. This is actually, I guess, the 7th, and 13 musician interviews over the last week. And I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having the conversations. But more than that, I hope you had a time to check out some of the great music like what we talked about tonight. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.